Looks like I was muted. Sorry about that, y'all. Well, hey, I am Courtney Reel. I am on our ventures team at Capital Factory, and so glad to welcome you to this month's Ask Me Anything. So we are going to hand it over quickly to our CEO to say a few words. So Josh, over to you.
Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas. Thousands of entrepreneurs, programmers, and designers gather day and night, in person and online, for meetups, classes, and co-working. And with our team spread across the state in Austin, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, we meet all the best entrepreneurs in Texas and introduce them to the people that they need to meet most: investors, customers, and talent to grow their team. We watch all of this happen so that we have this unique insight into the market and use that to invest in all the best companies through our Texas Fund. And we've been the most active early stage investor in Texas since 2010.
Awesome, Josh. Thank you so much. So welcome, like I said, to this month's Ask Me Anything. So today we have Tosin Odesanya, who is a really special member of our community. So just before we get that started, I want to tell you a little bit about this event. So we host these events monthly to tell you all about resources, mentors, entrepreneurs all around the state of Texas, so you can get plugged in with the Capital Factory ecosystem. So we'll be taking questions in about 20 minutes or so, but put them in the chat, and Sam, who's moderating our chat up there, will let us know what all those questions are. So feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll answer them towards the end of today's Ask Me Anything. So I want to introduce our guest today, who's Tosin Odesanya, who serves as the SVP, Head of Strategy and Transformation at Synchrony Financial. He's also a very active Capital Factory investor and advisor. He's a co-founder and board member of MySimpleChef.com, which is a private chef marketplace, which I'm excited to dive more into what that means, and one of the founders of the Nigerian American Investment Partners. Tosin has a Master's of Science from the Georgia Institute of Technology, a Master's in Business Administration, and a Bachelor's of Business Administration as well from Georgia Southern University, where he was recognized as the 40 under 40 alumni in 2019. So he's an impressive guy, to say the least. He's also a proud Nigerian American who was born in Lagos, Nigeria, and moved to the U.S. in 1995. He serves as a board of trustees and leadership foundation of Delta Sigma Pi, which I'm also a member of. So it's great to hear that, Tosin, and a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. So if I haven't already said enough to make you excited, let's bring Tosin up to the stage to get to know him and his story a little bit better. Tosin, it's great to see you.
It is wonderful seeing you. Thank you so much, Courtney. And it is wonderful being here with the Capital Factory family.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you. So first question is, where in Texas are you calling in from today?
So I am calling from Frisco, Texas, and just right outside of Dallas, Texas. And I have been here now just a little under 4 years, acting as a Texan, not quite a cowboy yet.
Still waiting on those cowboy boots. Well, hey, before we jump into the long list of questions I have for you and then our audience, I want to hear a little bit more about your story. How did you get started? How did you get the entrepreneurial bug? Kind of how did you get to where you're sitting today?
No, thanks. I mean, that's a great question. And I will say first, I mean, I think I owe everything to my parents, right? So I truly believe I'm, really the what you might call the American dream, right? So, I came here to this country at the age of 13 at a young age, and I saw my parents bootstrap, really, from very humble beginnings. And, what I would say is, I mean, over the years, as early as I can remember, my mom specifically has always been in some type of business, selling some type of goods, services, even having a cleaning business here in the U.S. when we first moved here. So, entrepreneurship has always been a key component, of my being. I can remember way back in high school, I always sold something, everything from candy all the way through college years, throwing parties to make, to be able to pay tuition. So, I caught the entrepreneurial bug early, but I will say this: technology was also a component, especially growing up in the 90s and being part of the early digital natives, if I may add. I started to find that, that there was an opportunity, for me, to be able to bring technology business together and use it as a formula, for success. And it's been amazing, through my 20-year post-college graduate, experience so far.
That's awesome. So what was the first company that you really started after all those kind of, trying entrepreneurial, putting your foot in the water, but what was your first kind of real venture?
Yeah, before I get there, it's probably important for me to even just talk about what I do on a day-to-day basis, right? So my career spanned, I started very early on back in the early 2000s working for IBM and in this very sales capacity role. And then, going over to RaceTrac, for those who are in Texas, for all of us in Texas, you're very familiar with RaceTrac as a brand, really having a very cross-functional, role, working in special projects. I would say it's kind of an entrepreneur type role of really looking at business problems. So just kind of give you an example, I remember Carl Borch, the CEO of RaceTrac, saying to me way back in 2008 or so, how do you get women ages 18 to 35 from the pump into the store? And we went through this whole process of idea and, listening to customers, looking at data, looking at macro trends in the industry, and then using that as a way to incubate and develop the Swole World frozen yogurt brand that everyone that is familiar with RaceTrac may be aware of. Even building the next generation of what people know today as a convenience store. We went from a 3,000 square foot RaceTrac store to a 6,000 store. So from a corporate standpoint, believe it or not, there's a lot of entrepreneurship going on, and I can go on and on from even experiences, working for Walmart as a brand, Sam's Club, in building amazing capabilities, digital products, scan and go, curbside pickup, a lot of incredible, innovation there. But bringing it back to your very specific question, I'll say, I've dabbled on and off, throughout my career in having side hustles. I'll say more recently is where really that I've been able to not only understand where my strengths are and being able to partner with founders who are leading incredible companies. One of the companies that I am that I would say I'm representing today is My Simple Chef. I act more as a co-founder, but really guiding the brand, guiding the incubation of of the product and how we drive this marketplace experience for private chefs. And there are several other companies that I have had the opportunity of advising or investing in, both through Capital Factory and through NAPE, which is the Nigerian American Investment Partners that I mentioned earlier.
That's awesome. So one thing I want to pick up on there is you mentioned your superpowers. I think this is a really important thing for entrepreneurs or people looking to go join organizations, understand what their superpower is and what they bring to the table. So, two-part question. What is your superpowers and how did you figure those out?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that, I started my career in sales, and that actually started because, when I was in high school, I worked at a mailbox, etc. I'm kind of dating myself here, but it's, now known as UPS stores, right? And the owner of the franchise, used to say to me back then, learn how to sell. No matter what you do in life, whether you're asking a guy or girl on a date, right? So whether you are, whatever you do, you could be a dentist, you could be a lawyer, no matter what your profession is, right? You are selling. And I think, one of the critical components that people miss about selling is understanding, the why, being able to read and be able to really have a 360 view of so many different perspectives. It's both psychological, it's both sociological, right? Without getting so philosophical here, but I think really the point that I'm making here is that I learned very early on that, I am, that a key strength of mine is being able to relate to people, right? Being able to, to uncover, discover, their why, discover their motivations, being able to listen intently, and certainly, also being able to pitch and talk a sweet game as well. So I think those things have helped very well along the way.
That's awesome. Well, that kind of leads into the next question of like knowing your superpowers, you're going to have to go over some obstacles. So what were some of those first kind of really hard trials as an entrepreneur, and what did you learn from them, and how can other entrepreneurs learn from those, maybe early mistakes or obstacles that you went through?
Yeah, I mean, I think really the number one thing, and I can remember, way back, right? So this was in the roughly between 2005, onward, right? So where the real estate market was sort of booming, and I had this opportunity where I was building decks and also staining decks as one of those side entrepreneurial hustles, and I was highly successful. It was an incredible venture. But one of the things I recognized back then was that you can't ride two horses at the same time, right? And you can where energy goes, focus goes. Where focus goes, energy goes. So for me, right, I mean, I think the thing I have discovered over time is that you can do all things, but perhaps not all things at the same time. So I took a step back, after that experience and saying, you know what, I am going to focus, at the time on my corporate career and being an entrepreneur. And then along the way, I started to discover not only my strength, but also I gained critical experiences, critical skills, in being able to assess, a business case, being able to, to bring a cross-functional group of diverse, leaders, to actually focus on a vision and actually see it to scale. So giving you an example, when we started, what we call Club Pickup at Sam's Club, it was a business that really did not exist, right, at the time back in 2014. And we set out to rebrand and relaunch where customers were sending fax orders into Sam's Club. And we rebranded it. We launched a digital site. We launched the ability for customers to, to check in on their mobile phone and let us know that they've arrived at the store. And for us to actually, these were very early, doing a lot of test and learn right in, and really bootstrapping at the time. A lot of those critical experiences today, I've certainly been very helpful, as I've had the wherewithal and blessing to be able to now say, let me wear the hat of an investor. So and really, I've been one of those where realizing my strength, right, is not just to be a laissez-faire investor, is to be an investor who is involved, right? So who is able to devote critical time to help founders, to not only go from that MVP, test and learn, to really scale and actually be able to achieve the vision of the organization.
That's awesome. Tosin, I think you're reading my questions right as I'm about to ask them, because that's a perfect transition. So I want to piggyback off of that, and let's think of founders who have a really great idea that they're kind of dabbling with. They maybe have an MVP, from going from companies like you were saying, RaceTrac and Sam's Club, where you have budget and teams to go build these pilots. How would you advise, an entrepreneur who says, hey, I have an idea, I see where it could go. How do they get there? Is that fundraising? What would be your advice there?
Yeah, I mean, really, before you get to fundraising, and I think regardless of how, whether it is a startup or an incumbent company that is, a well-established, brand. Now today I work in financial services, working for Synchrony, just to give some folks a little bit more perspective of Synchrony, right? So Synchrony, is a publicly traded financial services, firm spun off, from GE Capital. And Synchrony actually also has an arm of investing called Synchrony Ventures. So, investing in a variety of fintech, companies. And, some of our customers are some of the brands I've already mentioned: Sam's Club, Amazon, PayPal, Venmo are a lot of the brands that are our clients. So I get to even live this every day, not just from the startup world, but also from an internal, standpoint in the corporate strategy and transformation world. What I would say to answer your question, and there's a book I read a while ago called Product Playbook, Lean Product Playbook, I believe it was called. In it, the author talked about the lean canvas. where, really identifying, the problems, that you're solving for, what are the top set of solutions that align with that problem, right? So, what is the unique value as a startup that you bring to the table? Is there an unfair advantage that you might have? So folks can Google it and really look at, the details of, of this lean canvas. But, I think really bringing it back, up, right, is that from a fundraising standpoint, and the question that you would ask, there really isn't a one size fits all. I can tell you for like Simple Chef as an example, the founder of Simple Chef actually very early on from the onset, when he had the idea on paper, went out and actually raised a six-figure, seed round, right, just solely based on the idea. And then, as it went along through that process, realized that it was actually probably better to hold back on the fundraising approach and really, validating, testing and learning, looking at the market trends, hearing directly, since this brand, My Simple Chef, we like to think of the customer in twofold. One is the private chef, which are also, you can think of them as, the products that we are and services that we're trying to sell, and then the end user, trying to understand their needs, what they're marketing, what are the things that might matter when it comes to being able to get a customer to go from exploring, browsing menus, browsing chefs, to actually going through that entire purchase flow. So, I think what I would just advise for any startup or anyone out there is it is absolutely critical that, that you use the marketplace. I'd like to say the marketplace is your best teacher. So, and you leverage the data, the trends, you look at your competitors, you look at, and then you test, right? You test, you learn, you validate, let the data lead you to where you want to go. As you figure out the components that matter, right? Then leverage those components to then go to investors and say, we have found the magic sauce. We believe if we raise XYZ, it's going to help us to harden our code, and solidify and get our infrastructure, our tech going and humming. Or, we need these resources for marketing because we have validated XYZ. So I think, to me, that is a lot more effective in an approach. I look for those kind of companies, when it comes to decisions that I'm making, with a lot of my partners from an investment standpoint.
That's awesome. Well, and that transitions me to the next question, which I'm really curious about. You are in this really interesting spot in life where you get to be really selective about who you work with, whether it's co-founders or advising a team. And I know many of the audiences may be solo founders or looking to join a startup. So through your experience, how have you navigated co-founders and joining new teams, and what's the best way of doing that instead of just kind of rushing into a partnership?
Yeah, I definitely think, and again, just quite frankly, I don't think there's a magic, way of approaching this. I think it's absolutely critical that, that the vision is centered and the folks that you're bringing to the table are folks who are that one you can work with, you can partner with. So, that is a key component of success. I think as individuals, understanding your own strength, as a founder, and then understanding the strength of your team, and then giving them the wherewithal to actually, and the latitude, I like to call it a freedom and a framework, right? To where, they can actually bring their own skill set, to the table to help you to be successful. So, just pulling it back, right? So, if you're a founder who is a tech, founder, you might need a marketer as a co-founder. You might need, you might need someone who brings a finance, perspective, to the table. And, quite frankly, sometimes you don't need co-founders. You can simply go to there's so many platforms out there where you can find individuals who would work as contractors, right? And certainly, I think some of the resources that an incubator or accelerator like Capital Factory offers is actually another great example of how you can actually get really great free advice, counsel, connecting, networking. LinkedIn is your friend. I mean, there's so many various resources. Speaking at various forums. I mean, if I may just add this, and I think this is a very important point, to just even talk about my own journey to Capital Factory. When I moved here, in 2017, 6 months in, I believe it was 2018, spring of 2018, I was at the Dallas Startup Week, right? And I happened to, attended an event right at the Capital Factory, building. While going from one table, one pod to another, I ran into a friend, from a while back that I'd worked with, who then introduced me to a gentleman named, Chris Batty. Chris Batty happens to be the dean, also an investor, and has just done some amazing, entrepreneurial ventures, and really a mentor, of mine. At the time we met, right? So it was just a simple happy hour type conversation, right? And we cultivated that relationship. That relationship led to him introducing me to Brian Chambers, who is one of the key leaders at Capital Factory. And that led to now, so Capital Factory has been one of, those communities that has not only, been rewarding for me, right? So, but also, I'm actually having the opportunity to pay it forward as well. So I think this is one of those things where if you're setting out to be selfish in the approach as a founder, success is probably not going to be, in your way.
I love that. You mentioned a few really important things that I want to pull out of that. One, like we talked about earlier, of knowing your superpowers. And then two, I always call Capital Factory a watering hole, because you get everyone from every different sector hanging out and you end up bumping into the right person. So small plug, in the first week of August is that Dallas Startup Week, and Capital Factory will be having open coffee and founder salon. So make sure you plug into that so you can have a story just like Tosin of getting plugged into our ecosystem. So looking back now on different companies that you started or been a part of, what do you wish you would have known then, or which kind of resources, especially now in the world that we live in, virtual and hybrid, what do you think you would have plugged more into or taken advantage of?
Yeah, I think the idea of being fearless is so important, right? I think being bold. You cannot be in this space and be afraid to ask people for what you need. It's important, and I think I'll use my experience as a Capital Factory mentor. I meet with several startups once a month. I'm dedicated anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, for a lot of those conversations. The best founders and leaders come to the conversation well researched. They know my background. They understand how not only the strengths, the background that I bring to the table connects to their work. They often know who we are mutually connected with. Right, so that really breaks, the ice. They're very clear on what they want to get out of that conversation that day, right? And they follow up, they follow through, and and it becomes more than just a resource, but even cultivating, a long-term relationship. So I think the same adage holds true, right? So for everything that we do in life. Network, leverage your resources. Don't be afraid to ask. You never know. There's only 6 degrees of separation. And I think that will probably be my number one advice, is just using and leveraging, all the folks, that are around you. You will get a lot of no's, by the way. And I think, part of the fearlessness is also, I talked about my sales experience on being able to overcome objections and the no's, right? Part of that is sometimes being able to know the right questions to ask to come back later, right? Others, and getting permission to come back later. Others may be just being able to say, this is not the right partner for me. I am going to move on, and I'm going to move a different direction, and not being married to an idea. One of the things I have learned over the years, as an entrepreneur is, I think a lot of founders get so married and to it, be ready to divorce the feature, Don't build features for the sake of just building features. It needs to derive an outcome. So, focusing on that customer and user and that user, would actually enable that success. And those are some key lessons that I've learned over time.
That's awesome. And what's one thing you wish entrepreneurs knew now that you're sitting in an investor seat? Like if you could just put one thing into the head of every entrepreneur, what lesson would you transfer from being an investor now?
Yeah, I mean, I think really, I think folks really want to know. I mean, as an investor, and one of, through NAIP, and it's naip.com, Nigerian American Investment Partners. One of our members, a couple of the founding members are attorneys, and there's one in particular that is a PE. He works in private equity and in the healthcare space, and he's always challenged to say how he's always challenging founders on them being very clear on how the investor is going to get his or her money back. I think it's often, it's easy for founders to just say, oh, well, it's only 50,000, or it's only 10K, or it's only 100,000, whatever the case may be. But the fact is, we understand as investors that not every startup is going to be successful, right? But I think for founders, the ability to articulate the financial, outlook, the ability to articulate why they are the best person, the best individual to actually launch and scale that idea. Why should we? I mean, there was a lot of different social medias before Facebook came along, and someone chose to bet on Mark Zuckerberg, and right. So how do we, really, how do you convey, what your strengths are, convey where your areas of opportunities are, and be very clear on how you're going to get to that critical outcome and that next stage, versus, oh, here's what, and having laudable goals and vision that, sometimes is not quite as believable. So that I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully, that was helpful.
No, that was perfect. So one last thing I want to touch on before we go to the audience Q&A. So audience, make sure I already see quite a few coming through, but make sure you drop your questions in the chat. So Tosin, I know that let's start that over. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is really important to you, similar to it is with Capital Factory. So I'd love to learn what you're doing in the space with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some things you've learned for other entrepreneurs to think about when they're starting their companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is I'm so glad you asked that question. It's a critical component of of just this conversation. One, I think that the opportunity for a lot of diverse founders is not always as preeminent, and it's one of the reasons why NAIP, as an example, was founded to really focus on ensuring that we can also be a resource for not really for Black entrepreneurs, Nigerians, Africans, whoever it may be, right? So, but also, I mean, I think I can certainly say the investments we've made have not only just focused on that area. I mean, it's been across the board. But before I dive into DNI further, it's important to actually define what diversity is. And I always like to tell people that diversity is the range of human experiences, right? So it's our race, it's our ethnicity, it's our sexual orientation, physical abilities or attributes, even our religious beliefs, right, or value system. But and then the inclusion piece, right, is really the involvement and empowerment. So oftentimes you see, and the reason why I'm really defining this is that companies, oftentimes whether it's startup or even larger enterprises, right, just think, okay, what, diversity is the starting point. Inclusion is actually very paramount to ensure that you've got women, you've got a variety of of diverse folks at the seat of the table. You're empowering them, giving them, making sure their voice, their ideas are heard, and that goes both for your team and also goes for your customers. I mean, right? So because we all know that customers come from all walks of life, and someone said to me a long time ago, diversity is the mix. And inclusion is making the mix work. So, and from an equity, standpoint, The best analogy that I've seen is really, a coach, having a bunch of people at at the 0 yard line and asking them, what their life experiences are. Are you, if you grew up in a household of two parents, if your parents have, had this experience, if you are, of a black or minority, whatever race you might, ascribe to, right? All those questions. And what you start to see a differentiation of people stepping into different points on that 100-yard line, right? So equity is about giving folks an equal chance of how to start. So what I'll challenge everyone, on around this is that, this is not an easy, solve. It becomes easy the more you lean into it. It becomes easier the more you have the conversation. It becomes easier the more you actually take an intentional focus, going to, various schools, right, to go recruit. So there are no excuses that you can't find, diverse slate in hiring and, and making, decisions of how to be successful. So, and really for the investors that might be on that are listening, right, there is I would challenge us as investors in spending intentional time mentoring, coaching, guiding, and going and being able to build up, the entire community and ensuring that, that folks are being given the right chance for their ideas, and also that, and certainly evaluating it for, for its viability, as well.
I love that, and I loved your analogy of, diversity is mixing it, and inclusion makes it all work. So, really good analogy of what that means and what we're striving to do. So, I could ask you questions all day, but we have some from our audience. So, Lucas says he's a software developer and he's been working for half a dozen startups. Oh, awesome! We have it up on screen. But he wants to know basically, how can he become an entrepreneur? How can he take his skills as a software developer and go work with other awesome entrepreneurs to be a co-founder?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Lucas. What I would say, without endorsing any particular, site, there's tons of sites that you can go to, like Fiverr, like in order for you to actually put your skills out there, right? And you might test the bed as a way. This is one of those things where it becomes, test and learn. There's a lot of, founders who are looking for folks like yourself that bring software development skills. I can tell you, in the Simple Chef journey, as an example, one of the, the challenges the founder had early on is he is a serial entrepreneur, hyper successful in other, ventures that he's had, but never ran a tech company. And within the first year of starting out in the fundraising, he was pretty much out of the funds because, it was spent not having somebody who could guide and actually bring skill set like yours to complement, his. So I think it's really important, that as, that you find, the community. And again, I'm going to offer Capital Factory as a resource for you, because there will be, founders who have incredible ideas, and for you to find, and connect with. So you're doing the right things by joining this forum today.
Yes, and I can agree with Tosin. There is always a business-minded person who is dying for someone who knows how to do software development. So you're in high demand. Another question that we got from Christian is, how do you balance your day job with all of these advisory and investor roles? How do you make it all work? And is there a conflict of interest? And are you sleeping at night? Should be the end of the question.
No, that's a great question. One, I think in the past year, I've been a lot more bolder in being able to be out front on the things that I'm doing, both externally and internally within my company. I am very fortunate. I truly believe Synchrony is the best company I've worked for, and I don't say that just because I'm working for them. I think this is an organization that gives leaders, no matter what rank or level, the wherewithal to really bring their authentic self, to work every single day. So it's given me the boldness, and now, I mentioned earlier, you can't ride two horses at the same time. When I am, doing my day job, I am 150% focused on it, achieving, ensuring that we are delivering the outcomes, right? And one of the things I found is that the things that I'm actually doing externally actually contributing to Synchrony's success as well. Conversely, the things I'm doing at Synchrony is contributing to my ventures externally. So I am very transparent with my leadership, team, all the way to our CEO, of our company. So, I think I'm in a very fortunate space, to be able to bring my authentic self. And I'll just urge any of you that are working on this. I mean, it's that communication. I have worked for brands that was not the case. And I may be very real that, you need to understand the company you're working for and how you actually find that right balance.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we answered most of the audience questions, but Tosin, I want to give you a chance before we wrap up here at the end to say anything that you want to add to the story about how to get involved in Texas startup scene or anything else that you want to mention.
Yes, I think, again, I've given the plug around Capital Factory. I think a lot of you that are here already there. There's a lot of different, accelerators, incubators out there. The university networks are one, as well. A ton of companies. I even mentioned that, Synchrony Ventures as a component, and a lot of my former employers have their own venture group as well, both here in Texas and certainly outside of Texas. Do not be limited by geography. I think if there's anything that COVID has taught us, that is it. I have done my job at Synchrony 100% remote, since starting, and I've been, very fortunate to be successful at it, including getting promoted in the middle of it. So it can, it can be done. And then, and really with the external piece, right? The one thing I'll leave you guys with two things, and and just bringing it to my own family and as well, right? Behind me are, and it may be harder to see, but are two, key plaques. One is a little small plaque that says "Act without expectations." That is something for me as an individual. I try to live by. It was a gift that my wife gave to me on my first Father's Day, and I have not only taken it for my as an approach with how I lean in at home as a father and as a husband, but also as I do everything that I bring to in life. The second is the mantle of Nelson Mandela, Madiba himself, right? So and it says it always seems impossible until it's done, right? So so for everyone out there, right, who is striving, who is pushing, who is trying to actually find that secret sauce, for success, right? It always seems impossible until it's done. So you can never, if you kind of take Steve Jobs' words, you can never connect the dot forward. You can only connect it backwards. And I wish you all the best. Blessings to you and Godspeed.
Awesome, Tosin. Thank you so much for that encouragement. What a great conversation it's been. I'm sure we'll see you very soon at one of the Dallas events for Capital Factory, and we can all meet in real life again, which is the exciting thing about our world today. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for our audience for listening in. And you can connect with Tosin or I on Capital Factory's website and come join us at some events. So great to see everyone, and thanks everyone for joining today.
Thank you, Courtney.